Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a pivotal figure in the American Civil Rights Movement during the 1950s and 1960s. He was an inspiring leader, known for his passionate advocacy of nonviolent protests against racial discrimination. King played a crucial role in advancing civil rights through powerful speeches and peaceful demonstrations, including the famous March on Washington in 1963, where he delivered his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. His commitment to equality and justice for all made him one of the most influential figures in the American history. Tragically, his life was cut short when he was assassinated in 1968. But his legacy continues to inspire people worldwide in the ongoing fight for equality. Join me as I sit down with Mac Cochrane and talk about his life and his experiences marching with Dr. King. Hi, I'm Milan and I'm here with
Mac Cochrane.
So I'm just going to ask you a few questions. So where did you grow up, and could you talk about your life? Can you talk about what your life was like as a child?
Okay. I was born in Wilcox County, Alabama, on Selma Highway, about 10 miles from the Edmund-Pedestal Bridge, as we know today. It's a bridge that that we would cross coming out of the city of Selma, going to Montgomery. I grew up in Camden, Alabama, attended Camden Academy High School, and there where I met Dr. King.
Wow. How did your perception of your environment change as you grew up?
My environment was, back then, is totally different than it is today. Mostly, totally. The environment was friendly. However, we had a governor, George Wallace, that preached segregation yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and forever. And it was a totally different. We was all human being people, right? Mm-hmm. But I was totally privileges for the white sisters and brother, not available for the black sisters and brother. Mm-hmm. So Dr. King was to, his main agenda was to unite the two races together and to help us get our citizen right. That's why we call it a civil rights movement. But black people had no rights as a citizen. You had you have to address all the your white sisters and brothers by Mr. or Miss. You couldn't look them in the face when you're talking to them. You had to look at the ground. You couldn't even meet a white, as a male, you couldn't meet a white woman on the sidewalk. You had to get off the sidewalk and let her pass. If you messed around, if you accidentally contacted her, you would be arrested and you could lose your life. Just like, as you know, the story about Amish Till in Mississippi, which was next to Alabama. And both states was similar in treating, the black citizen.
Wow. How did you get involved with civil rights activism?
Well, my principal, God rest his soul, J.E. Hobbs, he was our principal at Camden Academy. And I used to always go by his office. He said he liked to hear me talk, right? So I would stop by his office, kind of hang out with him a little bit. So one day he says to me, he said, Brother Cochrane, we're going up. I've been invited to Dr. King Church tonight, and I would like for you to come with me. Can you come? I said, sure. He said, well, I would contact your mother and let him know that, you'll be late coming back. Okay. So, Mr. Hobb, James Edward Hobb was his full name, and his son, he had a son named Junior, James Edward Hobb Jr. He was 2 grades behind me. So the 3 of us went to Dr. King Church, and he greeted us at the door, had a meeting down in the basement, and we talked about the movement, and he talked about people that, he was recruiting people that wanted to join the movement. And so I was a student at that time. I was 10th grade, and you had to go through a class with him and his people, like John Lewis, McInerney. Well, he wasn't there, he was in Mississippi. But John Lewis was our teacher. He taught me, right? He was only about 4 years older than me. But he was in college at the time. And he's from this place called Troy, Alabama. I'm from Camden, Alabama, about 30 miles apart. And we would always meet in Montgomery, which is about 60 miles from Camden, and about the same from Troy. So I met John Lewis, and Dr. King, you only could participate in the movement if you would take a vow that you wouldn't, you could be violated and you wouldn't retaliate. So if someone would pop you in the face or kick you or something, you was to fall on your knees and pray for him and ask God to forgive him because he do not know what he do. So a lot of people that wanted to participate, but they couldn't, act in a nonviolent manner. So that's why the civil rights movement was called nonviolent, because we didn't retaliate to violence. We would pray for the people that inflicted you, which is kind of hard to take, but I did it. Popped in the head, kicked on the leg. I got cuts all over my body from civil rights, from moving, because I was also became organized in my city, Camden, Alabama. We had a church there where we would meet, and during the meeting, we would be organized to do voter registration drive. We would do organized to get more people involved and to peacefully demonstrate and march. So I organized about, I guess, 100 people, and we would go up to Montgomery and Selma and tell them, what we have in Wilcox County. Then we'd join in and do marches and stuff. In 1963, when they had the March on Washington, my principal had got me a summer job, so I was away. I was in New York working to get, make money to go back to school. Mm-hmm. So I missed that march, but I did the 65 when we marched from Selma to Montgomery.
Could you share a vivid memory or story from your time marching alongside Dr. King?
Sure. Dr. King, he was he was about my height, right? And he was really a funny guy, but he was very serious about his work. He tell a joke here and there, but he was of course, he's a minister. And minister, we act differently around them. You don't let your hair down and get loud, because they might chastise you, and you might appear to be disobedient or not godless. You had to be a godly person to work with him and believe, a believer, whereas some people didn't believe, and they was ungodly. They couldn't work with us. They wasn't a protester. I was a protester myself. I'm still protesting today.
How did participating in those marches shape your perspective on activism, equality, and social change?
Well, they was like growing up, like growing up, you're going to school, you're learning, and it was a way of life. It was a lot of hope, that we would someday overcome and be treated equally and fairly as everyone else. But we had no protection as far as law enforcement protecting our right. There was no such thing. You didn't have a right, as a human being, as a citizen of this country, and especially state of Alabama. Mm-hmm. We mainly, I mainly stayed in Alabama, between Selma, Montgomery, and Camden, Wilcox County, and Troy. Because we went to John Lewis town, which was Troy, Alabama, And as a protester, though, and as participating in the march and organizing, what have you, there was two sets of people. If you own your home or your parents own the property that you live in, right, then you could be up front, right? Okay, my mother rented the property, so we were like supporting actor in a movie, right?
Right.
We behind. I didn't do no interview. I never would do an interview on radio or television. You see a newsman with a camera or with a microphone, I go that way, you know, because the consequences would be when you get back home, your whole family could be in the street. You know, it was no right as a like landlord-tenant right. There was no such thing. You could be kicked into the street anytime you want, especially if you participate in some of these marches. We had a neighbor across the road from us. He was a white man. He had been in the military, and he was very instrumental in getting us to and from marches. He had a truck. He used to have us lay down in the truck, let us off the corner from around, and we walk, you know, go do what we had to do, pick us up, bring us food, and he was sympathetic to our desire to become equal a citizen. But he told me over and over again, he didn't want to have to shoot a lot of these people. You know, he had all kind of guns, and he carried a couple of them in his truck all the time. And he had retired from the Army. He was in the U.S. Army. And he talked about all his soldier was black and how they, you know, worked and got everything doing. And the capture of, I don't remember exactly what war he was in, but they was in a war probably, the Korean War, I believe it was, yeah.
Which march did you participate in, and can you tell us about it?
As I said, I was 10th grade when I first met him, right? And the most was that going to his church and meeting at night, right? Organizing, getting a group of people together, talking to people, training them, letting them know what they have to do and what they can't do, you know. So we was all, as my position as an organizer, I was like an extension of what Dr. King wanted us to do, right? So the most was that in Montgomery at his church, because that's where we met at most of the time.
Interesting. Is there something about the march that would surprise us?
No, there was nothing surprising. You said surprising?
Yes.
No, it was nothing about the march was surprising. We expected, you know, that was a march. They call it Bloody Sunday, which was on the 7th of March, and then the march that we got protection. The same people that were throwing bricks and rocks at us before the Alabama National Guard was federalized to protect us. These same people was throwing rocks and bricks and things at us, and you know, whatever they could throw. And after that, Bloody Sunday was when the march was first attempt, and they would turn around on the bridge. They beat up probably 100 people because we had these Alabama State Police, Selma Police, Montgomery Police, any person that wanted to be a law enforcement officer, if there was a white person and wanted to carry a gun, these things called a car rod, they are like electric pole you hold in your hand, you stick it to a person, you could shock them. You could actually kill them if you took it on the heart. They would carry them on the horses as well. So it wasn't surprising. Nothing was a surprise. You know, we expect the worst. We hope for the best. And, you know, when we got to Montgomery after the march, to me that was the best day in my life. You know, and Dr. King stood before the Capitol, and he said that people said that we would only get there over his dead body, or on their dead body. And he wanted the world to know we had made it. He stood in front of the Capitol, and, you know, people scream and holler, and, you know, it was such an exciting time.
What was the atmosphere like during those marches?
The atmosphere? Hostile, you know, everybody looking and kind of, even though the, you know, National Guard was protecting us, we expected people to, they was making noise to hostile, I mean, the people that still was against the march. Everybody wasn't for the march, and they were still yelling and hollering, but there was no brick thrown. There was nobody running us with horses and running us down, or guns, a weapon, because the National Guard had the gun mounted on top of the Jeep, like they were going to war, and it was kind of a war, if you ask me. We were being attacked and killed and beat just because we wanted to have the same right as everybody else, and they didn't, you know, thought we should have it, apparently, even though we did nothing to not deserve the same right. Well, it was, as I say, there was no citizen right. You know, you had no right except whatever they want you to do, you had to do it. You know, if you did, if you wanted to live. You know, there was a guy named Ross Pleasure. He was in the march, and one day he was walking in the city of Camden, and he walked on the sidewalk and didn't yell. And this white guy, he allegedly brushed against his shoulder. He pulled out a gun and shot him dead right on the spot. I understood that he only had to pay $100 to the sheriff. He never served a day in prison, never went to court. That was it. So a black person's life was, I guess, worth $100 if you took it. It was not a crime. It was more of a civil thing. Wow. You know. So that's what the atmosphere was like.
How did people react, and what were the challenges you faced?
The challenge was every day to stay alive, every day to go from point A to point B, right? And you know, the march was for many things, but the main thing was the right to vote. If you went to vote and you didn't know how many drops of water was in a gallon, which nobody knows, how many strands of hair on your head, nobody knows, you know. You got more hair than me, right? So how would I know the difference between, you know, how many strands of hair on a human head? These questions, they didn't know, but they would ask you the question. Nobody knew. It's an impossible answer. But, you know, in order to vote, you had to guess the right answer, and the right answer wasn't the right answer because there was no answer.
How was meeting Dr. King, and did you ever have any like personal conversations with him, like one-on-one conversations with him?
When I first met Dr. King, we was in his office that night, and he says to Mr. Hall, my principal, he says, "See these two young men here? These are the future. When they get our age, they shouldn't have to be dealing with what we're dealing with, you know." And Dr. King, of course, as you know, he was very young when he got started, and he was young when he was assassinated. So, but we was teenagers, you know, I was teenagers, and the son was about a teenager as well. And he says, "We got to make this world a better place for these people to live, and we have to start now. We can't wait. We waited too long." And I had another personal conversation with him when I went to his church on one Sunday, and he remembered me. I was surprised, but I heard this birthmark, and that's what he remembered me, because I said to him, "Dr. King, how you remember me? I only seen you once." He said, you got a birthmark up there. He says, you'll be recognized the rest of your life by your birthmark. And sure enough, I have been. People remember me that we had a class reunion, 50-year reunion. A lot of my classmates said, hey, Mac, how you doing? I don't remember you. What's your name? I'm the one that got old, that's what I would say to them. Y'all didn't get old, that's why I remember my name. But one of my classmates said, it's your birthmark. Okay.
What was it like to hear him speak?
When Dr. King spoke?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Everybody loved Dr. King speaking. Every word he said, resonated through your head over and over the days after he had spoken. The best, I remember him saying, he talked about upon his death, when he laid to rest. And he talked about what he wanted people to say or not say. He said he didn't want people to talk about what school he went to. He didn't want them to talk about what degrees he may or may not have. He says no mention that him being the youngest person to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. He said all he wanted to hear or want somebody to say at his funeral. That's why Martin Luther King Jr. walked here on this earth. He tried to help somebody. And he said, if you say that, my living would not have been in vain.
At the moment in time, what was the atmosphere as he spoke?
Atmosphere was quiet. Everybody listened, Nobody was saying anything because he had your undivided attention. Quiet. You could, when he's speaking, everybody listen. And because he was the head of the movement.
How did you feel when his speech was done?
Felt like you learned something. you learned something. You got something else to work with. If you're following what he's saying, then of course you're doing it the right way. Most people there, including myself, felt relief. Felt like he was told something. You just like you just won $1 million or something. The way you felt, because you learned that what he wants you to do, and a lot of time it was like the progress we made, and like Rosa Parks in her writing in her book, she said we came a long way, but we got such a long way to go.
How can we in 2024 continue to push for equality?
We have to continue to press for equality. I think if we follow the guidelines that Dr. King had laid out for us, right? Additionally, after his death, there have been a lot of great people that came forward, and they have kind of laid the groundwork or laid the cement that we could build a building with that would last forever, something you can live with. It was quite a bit that you would gain every time he spoke. Seems to me if he said hello to you, it's like almost like God saying hello, Dr. King, and he would come into the room, and I have a letter. I have a copy of the letter that he wrote from the Birmingham jail. And I have it on video. And since I got married about 14 years ago, and I took my wife back down there. She's from Delaware here, right? Mm-hmm. And she was fascinated to see all these civil rights places that we marched up the Highway 80 East going to Montgomery from Selma, Highway 28 going to Camden, Highway 31 coming out of Selma, you know, approaching the bridge. And we was told that if we crossed the bridge, that they would throw each and every one of us over the bridge and feed the alligators underneath the bridge. It was known alligators to be in the water. I never seen one, but it was general knowledge that the rivers were full of alligators because they love warm water, so that water is pretty warm down in Alabama.
What is most important for us to remember from his teachings?
That he had a dream. And he talked about equality. He talked about his 4 little kids being able to walk down down the road and join hands with the white sisters and brother and be treated as sisters and brother. Dr. King dreamed, and we all are dreamers. We all dream for a better day, a better life, and especially for the new generation, the young people come after us. We need to make the way much easier in all ways than it was for us. So that's what, you know, I take away from his speech.
What was most inspiring about Martin Luther King?
I think everything he did, you know, it was inspired. You know, I think just him being present, it was like the room was cooled down or heated up, depending on what the temperature was outside, right? And more comfortable when he was in there. You feel protected. You feel, even though, you know, his protection was forgive the person that mistreats you. You know, you could fall on your knees and pray for him if your nose is bleeding because he just punched you in the face. But and that, to me, that was powerful. It's no way that I wanted to do it, but I did it, you know, because I wanted to stay with the movement. And he's talked about the shining star at the end of the tunnel.
What advice would you give to young people today who are passionate about social justice and change?
I would tell them to be patient, tell them to be informed, you know. Sometimes you have to look where you came from to see where you're going. And that's as well, you know, the history. Educate yourself, you know, and set your eyes on a tomorrow where you want to be versus where you are today, and go for it. The world is more open today than it was, you know, prior to the Civil Rights Act being signed in 1965. Yeah, 1965. The voter registration. I mean, the voter registration act was signed, so anybody could vote that was of age. Didn't matter what your race, creed, or color. You could vote. You could participate in a democracy and elect an official to represent you in all levels of the political world.
Were you ever present in when Mrs. King said, talked and had speeches?
Mrs. King?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went to their church. Went down to Atlanta, Georgia, to Dr. King Church, and his mother played piano. As you may know, she was assassinated while she was playing the piano one Sunday. Someone shot and killed her. And his father, of course, he was a minister as well. Never did meet him for some reason, but I did meet the mother. His mother, Dr. King.
What do you hope that viewers will take from this interview today?
Well, I'm speaking as a protester, right? Which I am, and as I say, I'm still a protester. I would like to know that someone heard I said something that would be useful to them, that they may use as they go through their life. We came a long way. We certainly came a long way today. And I totally agree with Ms. Rosa Parks. We have a further long way to go than we've come. It takes some verses from the National Negro Anthem. It says, we've come over the way where the tears was water. We've come over the way, threading our paths through the blood of the slaughter. Yet, with a steady beat, have not our weary feet. True to our God, true to our native land. We must march on until victory is won.
Well, thank you so much for letting me talk to you today, and this was an enlightening experience.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and I really appreciate it.
Like and subscribe for more videos from the cause.